Lyra Vance sat in a chair designed for someone with 4 knees and no spine. Her boots barely touched the polished floor. Across from her, Principal Soral Yatak hovered behind his desk, literally. His species didn't believe in chairs or compromise. The room smelled like ozone and antiseptic fear. "You broke 6 of his bones," Soral said at last, his translucent crest fluttering with agitation. Lyra met his eyes. "He lunged at me with a neuroblade. It was ceremonial," he hissed. It was sharp. The principal blinked. Sideways lids first, then vertical ones, like a camera shutter snapping closed. "He is the firstborn heir of the Drakathi High Nest. You are a guest." Lyra didn't flinch. "I was a target." Soral's carapace cracked in a color Lyra had come to recognize as fury barely contained by diplomacy. He tapped the screen embedded in his desk. A holofeed played. Low-res security footage of the Academy's botanical wing. Her. The Drakathi. The sudden movement. The blur of violence. "Play it slower," she said. He didn't. "You were invited here under the assumption that humans would assimilate peacefully," Soral continued. "This act was self-defense." She leaned forward. "He tried to test how human bones break." "You nearly disabled him for life. I let him keep his eyes," Lyra said coldly. "I figured that was generous." Soral paused. "You are not on Earth, Miss Vance. Here we maintain peace. Not primal retaliation." Lyra stood, slow and deliberate. "I've seen peace. Real peace doesn't ask victims to apologize for surviving." "Sit!" The word crackled from his mandibles like glass being ground to dust. "You'll make a public apology within 24 cycles. Your message will be broadcast to the Drakathi delegation and filed in Unity's diplomatic archives." "No," she said simply. "No." His crest flared. "This is not a negotiation." "I'm not here to keep your school open," she said. "I'm here to learn and survive. Today, I did both." The room chilled. "You mistake your presence here for privilege," he said, his voice low now, dangerous. "You were an experiment, a symbol, a chance." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Is that what I am to you? A controlled threat? Or a weapon you can shelve until the donors complain?" Sorrel floated higher, wings tucked tight. "You are a disruption." "That can be corrected." She stepped toward the desk. "You want me to lie? To say I'm sorry for what? Not dying?" He said nothing. "You want peace?" she said. "Fine. But if peace means kneeling to violence in a prettier language, I'll pass." She turned to leave. The door didn't open. "You will remain under administrative watch," he said. "Effective immediately, your comms are suspended. Your quarters are restricted. You will not speak to other students until the tribunal convenes." "Afraid I'll infect them with honesty?" Soral's eyes darkened to pitch. "You think you're brave, but you're naive. The galaxy does not fear you because you're strong. It fears you because you remind us of something we buried, the cost of truth." The door hissed open, finally. As Lyra stepped into the corridor, her heart pounded. Not from fear, from the effort of restraint. Her quarters were small but clean. A cube tucked between the gravity fields of the student rings. The lights adjusted automatically to Earth diurnal cycles, but the glow felt foreign now, like a set piece on a stage meant to simulate comfort. Lyra sat cross-legged on her cot, staring at the wall. The Drakathi's face flickered in her memory. Smug, curious, predator thinking he was the apex. She hadn't just defended herself. She'd made a statement. That humans weren't prey, not here, not ever. The door chimed. She froze. No one should be allowed in. Soral made that clear. The door opened anyway. A sliver-thin silhouette stepped in, bird-like, with iridescent feathers tucked into a diplomatic uniform. It was Jintal, the Avathi student from Xenodiplomacy class. "He wasn't supposed to be here. He looked terrified. I only have a moment," he whispered, his voice like leaves caught in wind. "I had to come. I saw what happened." She stood. "You saw the attack?" He nodded rapidly. "From the observation dome. I saw him wait. He was practicing with the neuroblade before you got there." She took a step closer. "Can you say that on record?" His crest flattened. "No. If I speak, my sponsorship will be revoked. My family would lose caste." Why tell me at all? He hesitated. Then, because they planned it. The Drakathi. Maybe more. They needed you to react. They wanted to prove the human was unstable. Lyra's stomach dropped. It wasn't personal, he added softly. You were bait. Political bait? She felt her breath catch. You need proof, she said. He nodded once, eyes darting to the corridor. There's a backup recording from the internal dome sensors. I can try to get it, but if I'm caught, I won't ask you to risk your life, she interrupted. You don't have to, Jintal said. This place already has. Then he vanished down the hall, feathers whispering like secrets in the air. Back inside her room, Lyra paced. It wasn't just a random attack. It was a setup, and Soral knew he had to. That's why he needed her silent. She pulled out her encrypted wristpad. Earth Command had warned her about this, about manipulation behind civility. Diplomacy, her mother once said, is just war with better grammar. She opened a channel, typed in the one-word message, contact denied. Tribunal accepted. She shut it down before regret could whisper anything else. Tomorrow she'd face the tribunal, and she would not be apologizing. The tribunal chamber wasn't built for comfort or justice. It was carved into the upper strut of the Unity Nexus, a semi-transparent dome suspended over the vacuum of stars. Delegates from over 60 alien species perched, floated, slithered, or hovered in tiered rows, each section color-coded to reflect species class and alliance. Lyra stood at the center, alone on a circular platform. No chair, no table, no translator drone. Just her and the hush of judgment pressing in like weightless stone. She wasn't speaking today. Not yet. This was the preliminary hearing, a review of events leading to incident, which meant hours of footage, speculation, and off-record whispers. Principal Soral stood behind the moderator's dais, wrapped in neutral gray robes. His crest remained flat, composed. To anyone unfamiliar with his species, he looked calm. Lyra knew better. That flatness was fear. 2 hours later, she was escorted back to her quarters. No one said a word to her on the way, not the guards, Meiji-kin twins in mirrored exosuits, not the tribunal aides with their long, insectile fingers, not even the Drakathi envoy who passed her in the corridor and clicked his throat plates in disgust. Back in her room, Lyra exhaled slowly and finally let her body fall against the wall. She didn't feel vindicated, just trapped in a theater performance with an audience that had already decided the ending. Her wristpad blinked. One word. Meet, garden, now. No signature. But she knew who it was. The botanical wing was quiet. The synthetic light simulated a Terran dusk, soft orange fading into violet. Alien flora pulsed, glittered, and swayed gently in regulated humidity. This was where it happened, and there, half hidden between two knot trees, was Jintal. He looked worse than before. One of his eyes was swollen shut. His feathers had been plucked in patches, a punishment or a warning. You shouldn't have come, she said. I had to, he rasped. They're erasing records. Lyra's jaw clenched. The security footage? Gone. The central archive was scrubbed an hour after the tribunal started. Her stomach turned. But I have this, he added, holding out a crystalline shard. It's from the environmental node. Low res, but it shows the Drakathi unsheathing the neuroblade before you arrived. Time-stamped. She took it. Why haven't you given this to the tribunal? I can't, Jintal said quietly. My family's under audit. My funding already suspended. I'm not protected anymore. Then why give it to me? Because I was raised to believe that truth matters, he said. But belief alone isn't protection. Lyra slipped the shard into her boot. This changes everything. No, he said, voice tight. It confirms what you already knew. The truth was never the issue. Control was, she nodded, a cold clarity settling over her. You'll be summoned tomorrow, he said, already backing away. Speak carefully. Carefully? He paused, half in shadow. Not all enemies hiss when they strike. Then he was gone. Back in her quarters, Lyra activated the shard on her private console. The footage was grainy, unfiltered, but it was enough. The Dracathi noble, Serek Thas, paced in the garden long before she arrived. Practiced with the blade, adjusted his wrist armor for maximum visibility. When Lyra entered, he turned to face her, not with surprise, but precision. It was choreographed, intentional. She replayed it 3 times. There it was. Premeditation. The tribunal wouldn't care, unless it served their politics. But if this got out, if the delegates back home saw it, or the Human Command Council, then things would shift. Fast. Her wrist pad chimed again. Message from Official Earth Liaison. Subject, Prepared Statement Required Content. A pre-approved apology draft has been attached. Recommend compliance for continued placement. She stared at the blinking cursor. Apologize. Comply. Continue placement. In other words, stay quiet. Play the game. Keep the illusion intact. She deleted the message. The next morning, she walked into the tribunal chamber again. No guards this time. No escort, just silence and a dozen compound eyes watching her every breath. Principal Searle addressed the assembly. We have offered Miss Vance a chance for resolution. Her actions, though excessive, can be forgiven through symbolic apology. Her response, we hope, reflects humanity's commitment to the accord. Lyra stepped forward slowly. I won't apologize, she said, voice calm but steady. Because that's not what this tribunal wants. You want closure, not truth. You want me to kneel, not explain, murmurs. A rustle of wings. Shifts in gravity fields. I was attacked. You've seen the injury report. But what you haven't seen, what someone tried very hard to erase, is that the attack was planned. I have proof. She inserted the shard into the console. A projection lit the dome with blue light. The footage played. A silence deeper than any vacuum followed. Searle was the first to speak. This material is unverified. It's stamped, time-coded, and unaltered, Lyra interrupted. And I'm not here to beg. I'm here to tell you this was a setup. Not just by one student, but by those who fear humans being part of this alliance. Who want us gone? A delegate from the Yathari stood. His gills fluttered with agitation. What motive would the Dracathi heir have for such risk? Because he wouldn't face consequence, Lyra replied. Because he knew I'd be forced to apologize or be expelled. He counted on the tribunal folding under pressure. On humans choosing silence over scandal. A hum filled the air. Indecision, discomfort, doubt. Soral raised his hand. Enough. This is no longer about an incident. It's about undermining trust. No, Lyra said. It's about trust already broken. She stepped down from the platform, and the silence she left behind was louder than any accusation. She opened a channel. Typed in the one-word message. Contact denied. Tribunal accepted. She shut it down before regret could whisper anything else. Tomorrow she'd face the tribunal, and she would not be apologizing. Lyra didn't expect applause, but she hadn't expected silence either. Not this kind. The tribunal chamber remained still long after the footage ended. Delegates whispered across species lines, some using neural pulses, others flashing bioluminescent signals through the high-arched dome. What no one did was speak directly to her. Not yet. She stood alone on the central platform, pulse steady, eyes forward. She wasn't here to win a case. She was here to stop being hunted. At last, a voice cut through the tension. Miss Vance, intoned an elder Zirathi, bipedal, amphibian, silver-eyed. His voice echoed through 3 sets of vocal cords. You understand that revealing classified evidence during an active tribunal is a breach of interspecies conduct code? I do, she said. And you accept the consequences? I do, she repeated. But let's not pretend what this was. You weren't looking for a verdict. You were looking for a signature on a lie. Murmurs rose again, this time sharper, as several Dracathi delegates hissed in unison. Principal Soral raised a hand. His voice, calm and coiled, returned. Miss Vance, no one here doubts your capacity for survival, but you must understand the danger of implication without full context. I gave you context, she said. The kind someone tried very hard to delete. A new voice chimed in, one Lyra didn't recognize. High, clipped, unmistakably aristocratic. That footage was obtained through unauthorized surveillance. It does not represent motive. From the far-right tier, Serek Thas, the Drakathi heir, had been wheeled in, his limbs still braced. His voice was raw but clear. Curiosity is not aggression. Misunderstanding is not malice. Lyra turned to face him. You stalked me with a weapon. You called it a test. He tilted his head. We test what we fear. Then maybe you should have feared me before the broken bones. A low ripple of uneasy laughter spread from the human delegation. The tribunal didn't join. The Zarathi elder raised a webbed hand. This matter is no longer one of individual conduct. It has touched the fabric of the Unity Accord. A decision must be rendered, Searle spoke without missing a beat. The human student has violated procedure. She refused tribunal cooperation. She publicly accused a member of the Accord without following prescribed channels. I recommend termination of her enrollment and a full diplomatic apology issued on behalf of Earth. Lyra didn't move, but someone else did. A soft rustle of wings. Jintal, appearing from a side corridor, feathered, limping, but present. The tribunal turned toward him, confused. I was not called to testify, he said, bowing low. But I must speak. Protocol, Soral began. Has already been broken, Jintal said quietly. But truth hasn't. He stepped beside Lyra. I was there. I saw the Drakathi heir prepare the ambush. I saw the blade. I was told to stay silent. By whom? The Zarathi asked. Jintal glanced at Searle. By a representative of this academy's leadership. A shocked silence fell like a weighted net. Sural's crest flicked once, betraying a pulse of panic. That's unverified, he began. I recorded it. Jintal held up a second shard. And I've already submitted it to the Zarathi Enclave for forensic validation. The chamber burst into commotion. Not arguments, action. Delegates pulled up personal feeds, whispered to aides, contacted their embassies. The silence was over. The farce was unraveling. Soral's voice cracked with force. This hearing is over! No, said the Zarathi elder. This tribunal is concluded. The hearing has just begun? 2 hours later, Lyra sat in a private observation lounge high above the tribunal floor. Jintal rested nearby, sipping a protein infusion through a narrow reed. Below, delegates still debated, but the pressure was off her shoulders now. Why'd you do it? She asked softly. You could have vanished. He looked at her with tired eyes. Because no one else did. That's not much of a reason. It's enough. She let out a breath. You're going to be targeted. I already was. Silence settled between them. Then he asked, What will you do now? Stay until they make me leave, she said. Then maybe go home. Maybe not. You still want to be part of this alliance? I want it to be worth being part of. 3 days passed. A decision was issued, quietly, without media. The tribunal exonerated Lyra of wrongdoing. Serek Thas was placed on cultural probation. His father issued a formal statement of misunderstanding. No apology. Principal Soral was reassigned to an advisory post, which meant he'd been stripped of power without spectacle. Lyra received no medal, no commendation, just a new class schedule, and freedom to walk the halls without a leash on her conscience. Her last meeting came unexpectedly. As she entered the West Corridor to her xenopsychology seminar, she found herself facing the Zarathi elder. He stood alone, leaning on a carved staff. Miss Vance? He said, bowing his broad, webbed head. A word? She nodded. He gestured to a viewing alcove. Stars spilled across the glass. We feared your kind, he said. Still do. I know, but fear is not the same as hatred. No, Lyra said. It just lasts longer. He smiled faintly. Perhaps. But today, you reminded this accord what we agreed on, that strength and honesty are not incompatible. She looked out into the void. So, she said, what happens next? The elder's voice was soft. You stay, you study, you live. And when others test you again, and they will, you do what you did. Lyra glanced at him. Survive? He shook his head. Tell the truth. Later. As she passed through the atrium on her way to class, She noticed a small group of younger alien students watching her, whispering, glancing quickly away, not in fear, in curiosity, respect. She gave them a nod, and they nodded back. 3 weeks after the tribunal, Unity Nexus Academy resumed its illusion of balance. Hallways buzzed with polite greetings and studied ignorance. Delegates returned to half smiles and unspoken questions. But under the surface, something had shifted. A pressure valve had been loosened. The rules still applied, but they no longer felt unbreakable. Lyra Vance walked those halls with clearer eyes. Respect had replaced fear. Not completely, but enough that she no longer heard the silence grow heavier when she entered a room. Even the air systems didn't seem to hiss as harshly anymore. She'd earned her place. Now she had to defend it all over again. It started with a routine message on her wrist pad. Course update. You have been reassigned to Advanced Conflict Mediation, Multi-Species. Instructor, Commander Ilvan Tar, Room 07E. The note was unremarkable. The class wasn't. It was reserved for elite diplomatic trainees, students groomed to become interstellar negotiators. Peacekeepers' envoys. She hadn't applied. No human ever had. Room 07E was colder than the others. Metallic walls, bare floor, no plant life or adaptive lighting. Just a long steel table and one man waiting behind it. Commander Ilvan Tar was not built like a diplomat. He was Terran, mid-40s, muscle-bound in the way soldiers never quite unlearn. His uniform was Alliance standard but stripped of any ornament. His eyes didn't scan, they measured. Lyra stepped inside. He didn't look up. I didn't sign up for this, she said. Wasn't a request, he replied. Why me? He stood slowly. Because the galaxy just learned what Earth looks like when it tells the truth. Now we find out what it looks like when it listens. She narrowed her eyes. This is about the tribunal. No, Tar said. It's about what comes after. He tapped a tablet and slid it toward her. It displayed a dossier. Classified. Subject, Operation Hushed Veil. Target, anti-human faction within Unity Nexus faculty. Objective, identify embedded saboteurs operating under diplomatic cover. She stared at the text. You're using me as bait, again. Tar didn't deny it. You've already drawn them out once. They'll either try again or they'll pivot. Either way, we need eyes in their halls. Lyra shook her head. I'm not a spy. You don't have to be. Just stay observant. They've underestimated you before. Let them do it again. She paused. What if they don't take the bait? He gave her a humorless smile. Then we wait until they bleed confidence. Her next classes were different. The students weren't casual scholars or cultural exchange hopefuls. These were trained minds, heirs, tacticians, future diplomats with predatory eyes and layered language. Each one had been raised in empires. Lyra had been raised on instinct. She sat beside a tall, elegant Relith girl with translucent skin and no mouth. The girl projected her words telepathically, which meant every phrase arrived with emotional weight behind it. You smell like defiance, she said without insult. Lyra smirked. Better than smelling like guilt. The Relith girl blinked, intrigued. Behind her, another voice chimed in, dry and low. You shouldn't speak like that in this room. Lyra turned. It was a familiar face. Thas Revik, cousin to Sarek, and second in line to the Drakathi nest. Slighter build. Same cold eyes. You're still bruised from your cousin's lesson? She asked. I learned more from his mistake than he ever will, Revik said. You're not unpredictable anymore, human. You're documented, she leaned back. Then you know not to start anything, he smiled. Oh, I won't. But not everyone here is interested in rules. Some of us want results. That night, her room lights flickered twice, an emergency signal. Her pad buzzed with a secure link. Commander Tar appeared, his voice low. You were right. They're moving. Who? Revik's faction. We intercepted a burst transmission through diplomatic channels, coded, high priority, and flagged under Drakathi intelligence protocols. Lyra folded her arms. What's the plan? Tar's eyes narrowed. We let them think it worked. 2 days later, Lyra was formally reprimanded for an unprovoked act of verbal aggression in class. The official statement came from the Dracathi envoy, citing her comment as a deliberate provocation. No one asked for her side. The punishment: restricted access to diplomatic zones and a formal review. It was a setup, but now she welcomed it. She returned to her quarters to find her console had been accessed. No forced entry. No breach alarm, just a single line left blinking on the screen. You survived once. That was the lesson. Now let's see what you've learned. She stared at it for a long time. Not afraid, not angry. Resolved. That night, Lyra met with Jintal in a maintenance corridor, shielded from surveillance. "They're preparing something bigger," he whispered. "A staged incident, this time with casualties. Maybe during the interspatial debate. Humans are presenting for the first time." "When?" she asked. 2 days. The schedule just shifted. Who else knows? "Just us, for now," she looked at him. "If we act early, they'll bury it. If we wait, people get hurt." Jintal nodded slowly. "So what do we do?" Lyra didn't blink. "We give them what they want," he frowned. "What does that mean?" She smiled. "We give them me, just not the version they expect." By the time the interspatial debate opened, Lyra Vance stood center stage, one Terran among a dozen delegates. A symbolic presence, they called it. A test case, really. She read her prepared statement carefully. Slowly, she spoke of Earth, not as a threat, but as a survivor. She didn't beg, didn't lecture. She told stories. Real ones, of craters turned to farms, of soldiers who became poets, of enemies who became neighbors. Then she paused, looked directly at Revik in the crowd, and said, "But peace isn't built by avoiding danger. It's built by confronting it. Not every predator looks like one, and not every silence is surrender." She stepped down to silence, then applause, then chaos. Because moments later, Revik's personal guard lunged. Security never made it to the stage, but Lyra did. She met the strike with fluid precision. Took the attacker's arm at the elbow, twisted, disarmed, pinned him in 3 seconds flat. No overreaction, no blood. Just control. The cameras caught everything. Revik's smug expression turned to ice as the tribunal guards swarmed him next, because Jintal had already submitted the full plan. Every message, every time device, every name Unity Nexus wasn't silent anymore. That night, in her room, Lyra found one more message waiting. Status: clearance elevated operation, hushed veil, closed report, primary asset proved effective. Recommendation: continue observation. Potential leadership candidate, she read it twice, then shut the pad. Alone, finally. She allowed herself a breath. Not relief. Readiness, because peace was a performance, and she'd just rewritten the script.